So thank you all for joining us tonight. I feel like we haven't had a Lakeside chat in a couple months because last month we had our Lakeside chat that was, at the baseball game, which was a lot of fun. And thank you for those that could join us. And just speaking of the Lakeside Chats, next month we are going to have it on October 6th, so we're back to our first Monday of the month, and it will be on Medicare. So if anybody's interested, the Medicare one that we did last year ended up garnering a lot of interest, and people were like, can we do that again? So we decided to bring it back. So that's for next month. So tonight, though, we have Amy Ivy joining us. Yay! She agreed to come back because there was so much excitement from the last time that Amy, you were with us. So as most people know, you're a horticulturist and you were at Cornell for a number of years, a cooperative extension. And 31 years you taught classes. And so you are an expert on all things gardening. And so this year you thought that maybe talking to people at the end of the season and how to put their gardens to bed is how we'll call it. And that'll be a great, interesting topic. And I can't wait to hear all about it.
Great. Thank you, Christina. And
thank you.
Yeah. So, so I have, how should we do this? Let me just put my first slide up and then I want to stop since we're a small enough group and find out what your questions are. But I'm just going to put my first slide up so you can see what the topics I was going to go over tonight, that I'm planning to go over tonight. And that might help spur what you're thinking about. So it's just a couple slides in where my topics come up. So, but I'll tell you right off the bat, my main theme, I was telling Adam this, is you really don't have to put your garden to bed. It's great. This is a don't worry about it. There's no rush to get it done. It's really up to you what you like the look of. The plants really don't care in most cases. So that's the good part. You know, this is no pressure. This is a no pressure topic, which I like to reiterate. And there's so much left of the season and so much beauty out there. Just because things aren't green doesn't mean that they aren't gorgeous. So we've got a long way to go yet before we really get into the dark days of winter. And so these are the topics. I'm just trying to figure out a way to put your faces there. I got you up at the top now. So this is kind of what I was thinking of talking about. So cleaning up and cutting things down, fall mulch and winter mulch, and then a few specifics: Coleus, saving seeds, spring bulbs. And I know Bob's got a question when we get to spring bulbs. And then I don't know if anybody's a vegetable gardener. I just have a couple slides on vegetable garden cleanup, but planting garlic, because that is something you do in the fall. And then if you wanted to expand a current garden or start a new bed. So those were kind of my talking points. So keeping that in mind, I'm just trying to make this thing a little bigger so I can see all your faces, because I can only see a couple of, I can't see everybody. There, okay, there, at least I got all the students in the class. Okay, so let's just, so why don't we find out, pause for a minute and find out where you all are. Are you primarily, and we're not going to talk about lawns, and we're not, I would rather not talk about trees and shrubs tonight, just because we have enough to talk about with flowers and vegetables. But just why don't you introduce yourself? Maybe you all know each other already, but go ahead and unmute yourself, and if you are muted, and then just introduce yourself. So and I've lost your names. It used to have your names on the, let me see if I can get it with names. No, I can't see your names anymore. Darn it. Hang on, I can make it bigger. Get the name. No, because I think it's Dolores. Is it Dolores?
It's Dolores, Bob, and Debbie.
Okay, Dolores, Bob, and Debbie. Good, I can remember those. Okay, Dolores, why don't you tell us a little bit about what kind of gardening you like to do? I'm gonna take some notes. Dolores? Oh,
She's muted.
Muted.
Can you, Dolores, do you have yourself muted, or are you?
Is she talking to me?
Yeah, she's just wondering. Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
What would you like to know?
I'm just asking, I'm just asking each of you what kind of gardening you like to do, so I can kind of tailor my comments, and if there's anything in particular about putting the garden to bed that you had questions about.
Well, I like to do most, but I'm wondering, because I've had a hydrangea plant for, I think, 8 or 9 years. The first year I got it, it was given to me by my sister-in-law, had 3 beautiful big flowers on it, and it probably was only about a foot high. Well, I've had it this long, and since then there are no blossoms, no buds, just a great big plant. And I'm wondering if I'm cutting it down wrong in the wrong season or the wrong time or what.
What color were the blossoms when you had them?
They were beautifully pink,
Okay, that's what I was.
beautiful pink.
Yeah, that answers the question. That's the problem. You got the wrong kind of hydrangea.
Oh,
Yeah, so the pink, and then it also, the same plant will turn blue if the soil is acidic. If your soil is
I
alkaline.
know if you put stuff in the soil, it makes them blue.
Right, that's the one that you have, and that variety is not very winter hardy here. And so it has to bloom on the wood that got through the winter, where all the other hydrangeas bloom on the new growth. So if you do have winter injury, all the other hydrangeas will grow, and then they bloom later. They bloom, let's see, mine has started
I
blooming.
have 4 tree hydrangeas
Mhm.
that they're probably, a couple of them are only a foot high, and they got lots of blossoms on them.
Right, because that's the other
my-
kind. Yeah, the pink and
Different kind.
pink or blue is just not well suited. So I would go to a garden center, and I'm sure they've got tons right now. If you go to Cook and Gardener, or I don't know where you like to go, but go to a garden center and see what's in bloom, because they're in bloom right now, and pick out a different one. So
My
if you want the more upright growth, you want the PG type. And if you want a more mounded one with big kind of mop head, kind of floppy flowers, then that's the bush type.
well, my sister lives in Dover, Delaware,
Mhm.
and she's had geranium or hydrangea plants about the same as mine.
Mhm.
And hers had been 12 or 13 years too without blossoming. And she thought maybe she was cutting them down the wrong way or in the wrong season.
Mhm.
So she said she can't remember what she did last year, but this year they finally blossomed.
Great, good for her. But Delaware as a whole, it's like 3 zones warmer than we are. So what happened in Delaware isn't necessarily going to happen up here.
Right.
So yeah, you need to go, all the ones that are hardy here are white, and they kind of fade to like a really pretty dusty pink.
Now, should I just dig him up and throw him away
And just get a new plant.
and then get a new one?
Yeah, a different one.
A different colored one or a different?
It has to be white. You can't get one of the white, or the pink and blue ones do not grow here. You need to get either the PG kind, or the other general term for the bushier one is a snowball hydrangea.
Okay.
There are lots of options. You have tons of options, but you just got to go with those. So yeah, that's all. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Great. Sure, you're welcome. Bob, how about you? What kind of gardening do you like to do?
Okay, I have 3 raised vegetable beds,
Mhm.
and I have grown, I probably have about a dozen different tomato plants. I have, this year I did basil, parsley, and oregano. Also just 1 plant with peppers. I tried acorn squash and spaghetti squash for the first time. Had some lettuce and also peas. So right now I think I'm just left with the parsley, oregano, and the tomatoes.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, my tomatoes are still going strong, and I have different varieties. I probably have about 4 different varieties plus the cherry tomatoes, and I probably have about 12 plants. So they're doing well.
Great.
So that's that. And what I usually do at the end of the season, or at least what I did last year, was I removed the plants that I had, sort of tilled it a little bit, and covered it with plastic. And then in the spring, or when I'm ready to start growing again, I sort of use like a recharger kit, with some stuff to revitalize the soil a little bit. So,
Mhm.
and that's basically it. And then the other question I had was, my sister lives in Atlanta, and she and her husband are like expert gardeners, especially flower gardens. And they have a huge backyard that's just filled with flowers. And this year she sent me and my other sister in Erie, Pennsylvania, an assortment of daffodil bulbs. And there's probably about 30 some bulbs that she sent us from their garden. And
Mhm.
one of them, she said, is called 13 Sisters, which has 13 blooms on each stem. And she said it smells wonderful. So
Wow.
she said, read up on planting these for your area. Or she said, maybe my brother-in-law, who's a pretty good gardener, he would give me some advice. But I thought I'd take advantage of your expertise as to when to plant up here and how to properly do it, how far they should be spaced, things like that.
Great. Okay, great. And I've got a really pretty picture of spring bulbs. So when we get to that picture, that we'll talk about how to do all that stuff. Then
Okay,
that's
great.
and that's good timing because that's definitely a fall chore. So great. And then how about you, Debbie? What kind of gardening do you like to do?
I like flowers,
Mhm.
and I moved into a newly constructed house about 3 years ago. So I'm trying to get perennial beds going. That my ultimate goal is not to have to do anything or much
Get that
to
news.
them.
Yeah.
And I had the same question about hydrangeas as Dolores did. So, and you're the second person I've heard give that answer. But a few years ago, when I got these hydrangeas along with the house, I was under the belief that I was supposed to be cutting them back in the fall. So I guess, so I should just leave them
So
like all sticks and.
yeah, I'll address the pruning thing briefly too. Then, since that is such a common question. So,
Okay.
first of all, I don't like cutting anything that has to get through the winter. You know, any above ground, any shrubs. I don't like cutting any shrubs in the fall, because when you prune a woody plant that's got a stem, you know, these things we're looking at in this picture, they're flowers. They're all going to die to the ground, right? But when
Yeah.
you prune a shrub, anytime you prune a shrub, you're invigorating it. You're waking it up. It's changing how all the things flow up and down the stems. So when you prune, the plant goes, whoa, something just happened. So when you prune in the fall, you actually interrupt the plant's hardening off for winter and shutting down for winter, which is what plants have to do, especially up here. They've got to get ready. So don't prune anything in the fall. I know some people prune
Okay.
roses in the fall. I don't know why they do that. It's crazy. And I certainly wouldn't want to do in a cold climate, but there's this tradition of doing roses. I definitely wouldn't do roses in the fall myself. And then the other brief thing is a lot of landscapers will prune cedar hedges in the fall, and they seem to tolerate it fine. But I pruned a yew hedge in the fall, and all this new growth came out, and then all the new growth died in the winter. And so the plant looked awful because it had all this dead stuff on the ends of all the branches. It didn't kill the plant, but it didn't accomplish anything and just made it look ugly. So don't prune them in the fall. So the thing with hydrangeas, I was saying that the ones that are hardy, they bloom on the new wood. So because they're doing that, you can cut them down to the ground in the spring. But in the spring, you can cut them all the way down to the ground if you wanted to, or you could do people do all different variations of how hard they prune their hydrangeas. But you do that in the springtime, and then that stimulates all this new growth to come out. And that because they bloom on the new wood, you're going to have a lot of flowers, because all that vigor that you've created by getting rid of that old stuff, the new stuff comes up. So people who have those floppy, macrophylla is the technical name, but the bushy snowball type hydrangeas, a lot of people, because they get really big and kind of floppy, a lot of people just cut them down to the ground. They cut them down to like 4 inches tall in the springtime and let the whole plant regrow. So you can do that if you want. I have some PG hydrangeas, which tend to be more almost like a tall shrub. You can kind of train them up to be kind of vase shaped if you want, or whatever. Those don't need as much pruning, but you certainly can do the same thing because they bloom on the new wood. So That's the thing about the timing. And the thing about the blue and pink ones, they bloom on the old wood. So if you prune them in the springtime, you're cutting off the old wood, and they'll grow. You don't kill the plant, but you're not going to get any blooms. So those, if you lived in an area where you could grow them, you would prune them after they bloom. So prune them in the summertime, not in the springtime.
How about trimming evergreens?
So the only evergreen I suggest trimming in the fall would be the cedar, the white cedar hedge. Any other one, I would wait till springtime. And the thing about pruning is invigorating. So if you're trying to get something to grow bigger, taller hedge, or to fill in, get thicker and denser, then prune it in the springtime before the new growth begins. If it's something that's already big enough and it's like in front of your house and you don't really want it to get any bigger, you're just trying to kind of contain it, then wait and prune it after the new growth. That's not as invigorating. So let the plant put out the new growth in the spring and then prune it down to where you want it to be. And that's the best time for that. But this is like by July, August, September, and then into the fall, I wouldn't prune those things. You can take out one branch, but don't do that shaping pruning in the fall. Okay. Okie dokie. Well, so I kind of thought we were going to have more perennial, but we do have some people interested in perennials. So I have a focus on perennials, but I do have some slides on vegetables too. So that's helpful knowing where you all are with that. So I just need to make your images smaller. I want to see you, but I just need to also be able to see my slides so I know what the heck I'm talking about. So I'm just trying to, how do I make it slide out? Oh, well, I can't. All right, I'm not going to worry about it. All right, so we're up to this point. So this is what I'm going to talk about. These are the topics I'm going to touch on. So one of the things I was saying is you don't have to cut everything down. So what I'm talking about now are perennials. And so a lot of people, because perennials are a plant that grows year after year, but dies down to the ground over the winter. So whatever is above the ground is going to die anyway. So that's why the plants really don't care what you do to it. So whether you cut a perennial down in the fall or not, that is just totally up to what you want to do in your garden, what you like the look of. It doesn't matter to the plant. In most cases, there are a few exceptions, but for most of them, it's all aesthetic is what's driving your decision. So you don't have to cut everything down. We can get specific if you have any specific perennials you want to know about. And I've got pictures coming up. And the other thing to keep in mind is that if you like to attract birds, other wildlife, the problem is you also, it does make mice also like a similar kind of slightly messy situation, but birds love it as well. They love the cover they can get from that. And they also like a lot of the seed heads that are left behind. So a little bit of a mess is actually appealing to the wildlife. So you can kind of use that as an excuse for not getting too uptight about cleaning up your garden. But fall is a really nice time of year to do gardening. And so because it's cooler and that usually there aren't as many bugs and things like that. So if you do have some nice days where you've got some time, it is a great time of year to get a handle on your weeds. And this is true for your vegetable garden as well, because you need to keep after those perennial weeds, the dandelion and the ground ivy and all these different weeds that keep encroaching. So getting a real handle on them in the fall, it can really help so that next spring when the plants are trying to grow, the weeds don't have that head start on them. Winter mulch is tricky, and in fact, you can see my pointer, right? And in fact, I don't really recommend winter mulch. It's not that it is so bad, but the hardest part is knowing when to take it off in the springtime, because if you leave it on too long, you can actually smother the plants. By winter mulch, I mean the kind that is applied as a blanket on top of all of your plants, on top of the plants. I like to have mulch between the plants, and I'll show you pictures of that in just a minute. But the blanket mulch that is supposed to protect and give frost protection to the plants, the timing is tricky. You don't want to put it on too soon in the fall, and then you have to figure out when the heck to take it off in the springtime. And so I really don't recommend it. But if you did want to do it, one thing I did, because we live kind of out in we're out in the country where it's open. You can kind of see in the background there, you know, just how wide open it is there, and the wind comes whistling along. I have put evergreen boughs over my perennials. A cut up Christmas tree, if you have a Christmas tree and you want to cut it up at the end and just lay those over the garden, that works really well. And that just kind of helps to trap the snow. It's not a heavy blanket, but it just kind of helps the snow from being blown away. And it provides a little bit of protection without smothering anything. And the other thing about not cutting things down is it adds a lot of interest in winter. This is obviously a bush here, and then this is a bush here, but all this other stuff, these are all perennials, the grasses, and then all these different perennials that I would I could have cut down in the fall. And if I had, then it would be just that much more open and bare there. So I love leaving this stuff up. In particular, this is Sedum Autumn Joy. And this is, every gardener should have this. It's super easy to grow, and it just stands like that. And it looks so pretty with the snow on it. See, this is it again here with this snow piled up on it. It's just beautiful. I really think it adds a lot. So I highly recommend it. Here it is.
Amy, I think Debbie had a question.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Debbie.
About not cutting things down and letting them stand and letting it get messy. Then in the spring, is it okay to let that stuff just lie on the ground, and does it enrich the soil, or do you need to?
Yeah, I do tend to clean it up in the springtime, actually. Okay. I don't like because all those new shoots are coming up, and all the weeds are coming up too, because you're never gonna be done with weeds. So it makes it harder to see what's going on and to get down, like if you're trying to pull the weeds out, and stuff. So then I would cut it down. And in fact, what I do is I kind of let things, because it's all about aesthetics, I guess this is the better picture here, all about aesthetics, is plus it's hard to do everything all at once anyway. I cut things down as they get unsightly. So you can see that this is my one of my flower gardens, and this was full of flowers. So I have cut down quite a bit already. And so sometimes after like a wet snow or a heavy rain or something, some things will kind of flop over or they won't look as good. So over the course of the winter, and I just pick a nice day in the winter, when we get one of those thaws and I'm kind of itchy to something outside anyway. And so I'll cut the stuff down that doesn't look as good. So I'm not stuck with everything in the springtime to cut down. So it's not quite such a big chore. But yeah, that's what I do. But that's a really good question. Yeah, because come spring, in theory, it would be nice to leave it, but I take it out. And if you could put it in a pile, like in a compost, like a loose compost pile, I would put it in the back. I have a dumping spot, in this hedgerow, at the edge of the field here, there's a place. I just throw everything in that one pile. I don't plan to ever go back and dig it out again, but you could if you wanted to.
Yeah, I have one of those at the edge of the woods, and sometimes I have some irises growing up from it. Sometimes
I've had amazing things come up. Yeah, it's amazing. I've got bee balm, the whole patch of bee balm in there. Daffodils come up, so every now and then I end up pulling out a daffodil without meaning to and stuff. Yeah. So anyway, good question, really good question. Yeah, so you do eventually want to do it, but at least you can do it on your own schedule. You don't have to get it done before like Thanksgiving or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question. So here's the garden that's along the front of my house. I need to put your faces someplace where they won't be blocking everything. Maybe I'll just get rid of you. Hang on. There. All right. So here it is after the first frost, and I kind of do this in stages. You don't have to, but just because my main focus is the aesthetics of how it looks. So I wait until the first frost comes in, and that gets the weaker plants, the more tender plants. So Coleus, purple basil, or any kind of basil, but in this garden I have purple basil, marigolds, and then the zinnias. You can see some of the zinnias here and the pink here. They don't look that bad, but if you looked up close, they don't look great. They're going to decline pretty quickly. They are in the sensitive group, but a lot of them still look good. This bright yellow is calendula, which is really durable. That one will go through light snow even. I love calendula in the fall that way. This is blue blue salvia, the regular bedding salvia. Blue bedder is one of the names, and Victoria, I think, is the other one. And that's very durable and will get through frost with no problem. And then sweet alyssum looks kind of messy here because the leaves are all piled up around it and stuff, but sweet alyssum will tolerate frost. And petunias are another one that will tolerate frost with no problem. Snapdragons also, oopsie. And then here's my sedum autumn joy. And then on this picture you can't see, but I do have rudbeckia, the black-eyed Susan. It was back here. Here's the same garden a little earlier in the spring. And the black-eyed Susan holds up pretty well through a few light frosts as well. So anyway, so what I do is I take out the stuff that looks ugly at the time. So here I went through the garden, I took out those zinnias because I could tell they were going to be fading fast, left the calendula. You can see the bare spots now. So I just pull out those annuals. Now you can see how the rudbeckia is looking just fine. This is a peony. And this is a tropical salvia that I buy just because I want something big there, but it dies every year. Every year I buy a new one. It comes in a 4-inch pot, one of those proven winter pots, and it's going to die. It'll die with the next hard frost, but I like it, so I grow it anyway. But you can see how by pulling stuff out, now I've made some holes. And one thing for soil health, whether you're a vegetable gardener, flower gardener, you really try hard to avoid having bare soil. It's always good to have something on top of the soil, covering the soil. It's good for the health of the soil, for all those microbes, all the life that's in the soil. So, and you know what, Adam, I can't see people's faces now, so just go ahead and interrupt when somebody is indicating they have a question. Just
Sure. Yep.
right in. So so what I've done, so what I did here was I took all these leaves that had fallen and raked them up, oopsie, and rake them in to fill the bare spots. I could have been a little more tidy here, but so I rake it up and expose the grass and then fill in all those bare spots with those fallen leaves. This is an ash tree, and ash trees have perfect sized leaves. I love this tree for what it does for mulch, but maple leaves would work as well. Any kind of fallen leaves. We'll talk more about mulch in a minute, so this is like stage one, the first frost came, and then eventually all of these things, everything but the sedum is going to be gone. It's going to be dead. The peonies just flop right down. So I cut them down now just because they look, once they flop, I cut them down. I don't leave them till springtime. Anything that looks, because this is right by the front door, anything that doesn't look good anymore, I just cut it down or pull it. If it's an annual, I pull it out. If it's a perennial, I just cut it down. But so I just do it in stages as it starts losing its good looks. Now this is
so many moles.
Moles, oh God.
Oh my God, they're just, I don't know, every place I go and step, there's a mole hole.
Oh gee, yeah. And then probably voles and what was the other one? Chipmunks might be running around in there too. I think they use each other's tunnels or something. Yeah, that can be a real challenge. I've had problems with I think it's chipmunks for me, because I've seen the little guys running
Yeah, I
around.
have chipmunks too.
Yeah, and they'll dig. They don't really hurt the plant directly, but they tunnel underneath it and then make it hard for the roots, and so the plants may not live well. Yeah, that's a tough one to deal with, especially if you feed the birds like I do and stuff. It's hard to balance, attracting the bird wildlife and not attracting the rodent wildlife. But do you live in town, Dolores?
Do I what?
Live in town.
Yeah, I live in town, but it's like an outside town.
Right. No, but what I mean is, because if you have neighbors too, what's hard is when houses are side by side, even no matter what you do to try to discourage critters, especially rodents, your neighbor may not be doing that, so sometimes it's hard when you're in a neighborhood to deal
I
with.
got some of the stuff that's supposed to get rid of the moles, deter them from coming in, which I've used different things, and it seems nothing works.
Yeah, it's really that's tough. That is a hard one to solve.
And it said that that the moles are there because they're digging up and eating the bugs that are in the underneath.
Yeah, they like to eat earthworms and grubs. They like to eat the big, fat, juicy things. So, in a way they're helping with the grubs, but they're not helping with everything else. So that
Oh, I must have lots of bugs.
yeah, and then you could be having voles too, which are field mice, and they love to eat the plants and the seeds. That voles are vegetarians, and so they use the mole tunnels, and then for protection, and they eat your actual. They'll nip the buds off of things if you have that problem in the springtime with some of your spring bulbs. Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't really have especially if you have neighbors, because if they have cats, you want to be careful what you might be putting in your garden that might harm other people's pets. Any kind of trap kind of thing. You want to make sure it's the kind that won't get a cat paw caught in it, and stuff. There is one product, I don't know if they're still making it. Back when I used to answer this question more, there's a product, it's a repellent for moles. It's basically castor oil, and it's a smell that they don't like. And you just spray that, and it's supposed to repel them. I have no idea how well it works.
Does that work for squirrels?
I don't know.
I have lots and lots of perennial flowers at my house that the woman that lived there before me and my wife, she planted all these amazing flowers, and most of them are all perennials, which is perfect for me because I'm lazy. So there's lots and lots of bulbs everywhere, but I keep finding these squirrels are digging them up and eating them.
Yeah, that is tough. You can try putting if it's bare area anywhere, you could try putting some chicken wire flat on the ground between the plants, but it's a pain in the neck to work around chicken wire. Squirrels are super challenging.
I'll have to start letting the cat out probably.
Yeah, that a good predator would help a lot.
Yeah.
But squirrels can be really real pain. Yeah. So
the crocuses last fall, and this spring a chipmunk took every single one.
oh no.
Yeah, it was pretty. I was trying to figure out what it was, so I put my trail camera down where they were disappearing one by one, and it was a chipmunk. So I'm just not going to grow crocuses anymore.
That's kind of what you have to do, find the things. That's the one good. That's one thing. When we get to the bulbs, daffodils are slightly toxic to most animals, and they don't like the taste of them. So they're all different kinds of daffodils, little teeny weeny ones and colors, not a huge range of colors, but quite a variety. So I would suggest trying daffodils instead. And definitely not, tulips are like candy. So tulips can be really hard if you have a critter problem.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to mention, and this is something you can do all summer long too, but just in terms of tidying things up, you don't have to cut everything. Back to the theme of not cutting everything down. I took this picture just this afternoon. This is something called feverfew, and it was beautiful. This is what it looked like this is how tall it got when it was flowering, and this is one of the branches, and they turn yellow and they look terrible, and then they die, and then they just look cruddy up there, but they're putting out new growth down at the bottom. So if I cared in this area how it looked, I could make a big difference by just trimming that down, cut it those stems down to the ground, and let the green grow. It won't bloom again, but it'll make the garden look a whole lot better. And this is Shasta daisy, and this is a classic one too. So they look beautiful, and I usually try to do this right after they finish blooming. Here's the stalk. I took the flower off, but left the stalk here, and the stalk is just gradually going to get uglier and uglier. There's no point in keeping it. It's not going to bloom anymore. And so if you cut it, if you follow the same thing, follow the stalk down to the ground, especially as soon as you see those new shoots growing, see all those new shoots growing, cut all that down to the ground, and then you won't get more Shasta daisies, but it certainly is going to look a lot nicer. And this is an area I did just recently, so it hasn't even gotten quite as nice and full as it will. It will get nice and full like this feverfew. So you'll have a nice bunch of clean, healthy looking leaves. So that's just something that will help to tidy things up. This is a garden that is it's about 1/3 perennials, mostly echinacea, and then have a lot of annuals, a lot of zinnias, cosmos. like that in this garden. And so at this point, we've already had a hard frost. This was from a couple of years ago, and I pulled all the things that got frozen, and now I need to address the echinacea that's sticking up and what to do about that. So echinacea, so again, because it's a perennial, it doesn't care what I do. It's going to die down to the ground and send up new shoots next year. So it's all about the aesthetics. And so knowing that birds like to eat the seeds, I take a look and see if there are a lot of seeds left. They stick out from the ball here at the top. And if I feel like the birds have been, want them, I leave them and just kind of deal with how it looks. Or I can just cut those down and just leave those leaves there. They will die over the winter, and then they just become part of the soil. I don't need to remove those in the springtime. They're small enough that they just decompose right there. So it looks kind of yucky right now. So I did a close-up of this one. So the section I'm looking at is just this much here, just to kind of show how you can make a difference in a small way. So this is what it looked like after I cut the long things down. I could see, you can't tell, but there are a lot of weeds mixed in here. I weeded all around this clump, but I never weeded through the middle of this clump all summer long. So here it is, having been weeded out. You can see it did a lot more bare ground now. So I got it all weeded out, and then now I took grass clippings. We happen to have a lot of grass. My husband mows, and then he drags a sweeper behind the lawnmower after he's mowed it, and can sweep up all this grass. So I have lots of nice grass clippings that work really well for mulch, and they break down really nicely. But just to cover the bare soil. So here's that garden. So here's the clump that I just cleaned up. And then this is what echinacea looks like if you don't clean it up. So it just kind of has that kind of ratty look, but all depends on what you like the look of. So usually I don't put the grass clippings down this thickly, but I had a lot of them. And I really need to work on the soil. So I wanted to get all that organic matter in there. Just for comparison, this is what shredded cedar mulch looks like. It's very pretty, very, very attractive. You can see how much nicer it looks. The grass usually isn't quite so lumpy looking. So I think it's actually attractive too, because it all kind of turns the same sort of tan color and covers the ground. But obviously, I think everybody loves the look of that, and it really is great. But being cedar, it is not going to break down quickly. So it's best used around shrubs, because in perennials, we're forever digging up and turning things around and, removing things and stuff. So the mulch is going to get mixed down into the soil. Which is good, because you want to have organic matter in your soil. So you want to use a mulch that's going to break down. So that's why grass clippings, leaves, or shredded, wood would be fine. But not like big chunks of wood mulch or the cedar, because cedar, is kind of known as a wood that doesn't break down. It's not a bad thing to use in a perennial garden, but it's just going to be a little more challenging as you work in the soil with it. And fallen leaves are the other thing. Fallen leaves are fantastic for the garden. If you can go over them with your lawnmower first, it'll really help them settle in nicely, and they'll break down more quickly. So fallen leaves are terrific. So
Amy,
Yes.
I've used rubber mulch, the shredded rubber mulch around
Yep.
all my shrubs. Is there anything I need to be aware of? Or it seems to keep the weeds down, and it holds the water, and it has the same good look. I just didn't.
Yeah, if you like that, it definitely lasts a lot longer. The hard part is because it's around shrubs where you're not digging in the soil, you're not disturbing. In a perennial garden, we're forever digging plants up to divide them or rearrange them and stuff. So then having something like rubber, you would be mixing that down into the soil, and it never would break down. So I wouldn't use it in a perennial garden, but around shrubs, it should be fine. Yeah. Covering the soil is really what, and covering it with something that kind of can breathe and stuff like that, because the rubber is crumbled, so there's spaces between it and stuff. That's nice. Is there another question? No, okay. So I just wanted to mention Coleus, and I brought, I can't see myself. Let me see if I can make this. At least I can see what I'm showing you all. No, I can't do it. Hang on there. Okay. So Coleus is one of my new favorite in the last few years. I've just loved growing Coleus. It's very, very frost sensitive, very, very, very tender, but it's really easy to grow as a house plant. So what I've been doing, so this here on the left is in that garden that's by the driveway, by the front porch. And then this is in a big pot, one of those big, kind of urn kind of pots on the front porch. And so what I do is I take cuttings. Wait a minute. And so these are them. This is what I just was showing you. I put them in a little vase of water for now. And so I take cuttings and root them. They're really easy to root, and then grow them as a houseplant all winter. And then in about March or so, I take a lot more cuttings to multiply my supply, and root all of those. And then I've got all kinds of Coleus to plant in the garden in the springtime. And I really love it. You don't have to do it, that you can buy Coleus. The kind that comes from seed isn't quite as, there's not as much variety in it. Because I'm really into it, I really like some of these more unusual. I mean, look at the edge of that leaf. It's really cool. So it all depends what you want to do, but just one little, fall tip, if you wanted to bring it in, it's easy to root and relatively easy to grow as a houseplant. If you want to save any seeds, especially in the flowers, I tend not to save too many vegetable seeds because there's some diseases that can persist on the seed. So for vegetables, it's usually a better idea to start with new seed each year, just so that you aren't carrying a disease over. Flowers don't seem to have quite as much problem that is seed-borne the way vegetables do. So the main thing is you just want to make sure that the seed pod, this is a columbine, and I don't know what this one, I'm trying to see what it is, but I can't quite tell what it is, but it's something like an echinacea or something that had a ball-shaped seed pod. You want to wait till they're dry enough so that they crumble apart. They need to mature all the way on the plant before you take off these seed capsules. If you take them too soon, the seed won't be mature and it just won't develop the rest of the way. So that's just a little hot tip there. And then here's the daffodil things. I mean, the spring bulb thing. So this definitely is the time of year to be thinking about spring bulbs. Timing wise, it's good to wait until late October. If you do it, because the thing is, what we want to do is plant the bulbs and have the bulbs grow roots before winter, before the ground freezes, just roots. We don't want top growth on the daffodils and tulips. A little side note, the grape hyacinth does put up leaves in the fall. It's just what it does, so don't worry about that. But the other ones we don't want, so the idea of waiting until late October, even early November, really up until the ground freezes, you can get away with it. But it's nice to have a little bit of time for the, by doing it in October, the roots have more time to grow even more and really anchor in well and start, taking up nutrients from the soil and stuff like that. So the depth, it's kind of a ratio thing. So it all depends on how big your daffodils are, because some bulbs are tiny, like an inch tall, and then some are more like 3 inches. So what they say is you want the bulb to be planted 2 times the height. So what's hard is if you have a 3-inch bulb, you want to dig a hole 9 inches deep, so that when you put the big bulb in the bottom of the hole, it's going to have 6 inches. So it's kind of, so you want it covered. That's the way to look at it. You want it covered by 2 times the height of the bulb. That's an easier way to think about it. Most daffodils and tulips are 2 inches tall. So you plant them, you dig a hole 6 inches deep, put the bulb in, and then that leaves 4 inches above the bulb. Deep is good. Don't be afraid to go deep with them. And especially with our winters, it does help. It does help them to be down deep. I don't know about the ones that are coming from Atlanta. They may have a different vernalization, a reaction to the winter. Like our daffodils and tulips need to have winter to stimulate the bloom. The kind that your sister right, Bob, that your
Yes.
sister,
Yes.
yeah, is growing may not need or want that wintering, like the paper white. A lot of people know those paper white narcissus you get at the holiday time a lot. Those don't need any cold treatment, but they aren't hardy here either. So you just plant those in a pot and they grow right away. That's why they sell them for the holidays, because they'll grow right away. They bloom right away. But also it's December and you can't plant anything in December anyway, because usually the ground is hard. But that paper white group would not survive our winter. If you planted them in the ground at the right time, they wouldn't make it through our winter.
Okay.
But try it. I mean, it's neat because I dig up my daffodil, especially my daffodils. The tulips don't really multiply so well here. It's good that they even make it through the winter here, but daffodils will multiply here. And so every now and then I dig up a big clump of them and break them apart. And then I have lots to share. And that's probably what your sister was doing.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, give that a try. And the big thing with spring bulbs is when you plant a new bulb in the fall, it's got everything it needs to grow next spring, to make that bloom. Because the first thing that comes up is a couple leaves, and then the flowers come up. But the key to getting them to persist year after year is letting the plant grow. So after these flowers here are finished, they're all done, you still need to grow the leaves. The leaves need to be left alone, and they get in the way. I know it's a pain, but they need to grow so they can then make food from the sun and store it in the bulb for next year's bloom. So if you cut down the leaves before they turn brown on their own, you will be diminishing your bloom for the next year.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, and even though the tulips aren't long-lived, I think you could count on them for a year or two around here. I just find them to be so gorgeous. I just plant them every year anyway, because I love them. Just my thing. And luckily our deer don't come so close. Deer, as I was saying, tulips are candy to so many critters, deer, rabbits, and then all those other voles and stuff too. So tulips can be tricky, but if you can grow them, go for it, because they're fun. They're so pretty. Yeah, so like this is my garden. It's insane. I definitely have too many bulbs in my garden, but I can't help it. So that's why I dig up some now and again. You can see how big, because this garden here is 35 years old. So some of these bulbs have had many years to multiply. But you can see how you can have, these are perennials here. So you can just put in the perennials. So you can put your bulbs in between all your perennials, and then you don't have to do anything to them. Again, you can leave them there for 35 years and they'll keep blooming. So especially you can see how the daffodils are definitely the persistent ones. And then I try to remember where the gaps were, where to put the tulips, to add more tulips. So for the vegetable gardens at the end of the season, it's a little simpler because the only perennial vegetable we have around here is asparagus. And we're not going to talk about that unless you have a question. So basically you just clean everything up. And then with vegetables, because diseases are a bigger issue, it does pay to pull everything out. And if you have anything that was diseased, like the tomatoes often get leaf spot diseases, it's super common. It's a good idea to get that stuff out and gone. Don't put it in your compost pile. Put it, in its own, someplace where you're not going to be ever bringing it back to the garden again. So it is good to clean up vegetable gardens. And then once you've done that and pulled everything out, this was my potato patch a couple of years ago. So this is after I've harvested the potatoes. Then it's a good time to get all those weeds out, square up the beds. I'll take a shovel and straighten. I don't have a before and after too much for this one, but it's a nice time to square up the beds, and then if you can, find something to cover the soil. So it can be leaves, grass clippings. Some people plant cover crops. That's a whole nother topic I don't have time to get into today, but just keep working up that soil. And even in the raised beds, I've got several raised beds now, and same thing there, pull out the plants after they're finished, and then cover that soil as well with something that will decompose. Fallen leaves are the best. Maple leaves are wonderful. Maple leaves and ash are two of my favorites to use, but maple leaves are pretty big, so mowing them first will really help. I don't know if any of you grow garlic. I did want to mention it. I brought a garlic bulb. It's really fun to grow. And so this one is similar basically to the spring bulbs. You plant them again in late October. You want the roots to grow, not the tops to grow. They're fun to do. The main thing is you want to make sure you get the hard neck. Don't use the grocery store kind. That usually is the soft neck that came from California or elsewhere. You need the hard neck to be hardy. And the hard neck it's called hard neck because it's got this hard little stubby thing here that actually made this curly scape. And then I broke open a head of garlic, and then here's the hard neck that's up in the center. That's why you often don't see that. And the grocery store types tend to not be the hard neck. But I would suggest if you want to grow some, just get some garlic at a farmer's market or any of our local growers, roadside stand, wherever food co-op, wherever you get local produce. Now is the time when they have it out there, and it's the same stuff that you eat, but you just want to plant the biggest cloves. Save your biggest cloves for planting because that'll make for a bigger plant. So that's all I'm going to say on that one. Give them enough room. And it's fun to grow. If you haven't ever grown, even if you have a flower garden, plant one head, take by one head, break it apart and plant it. It's just kind of fun. And then you harvest them in about middle of July next year. This is I'm really out of time. So I'm just gonna have to be quick here, but this is a great way to expand your garden, or if you wanted to start a new garden. I just mow the lawn, and then I layer newspaper. The trick is 6 sheets of newspaper at a time, and then layer them, shingle them along. You can see all the way down here. The Press Republican works really well for that. Many issues of the Press Republican are in my flower garden now. So you just lay it down, and then you have to cover it with something. I think this year we had a lot of grass clippings. It looks like there were some leaves mixed in too. It had all this different stuff. So you lay it down to smother out the grass, then you cover it with the mulch to keep the newspaper in place. And then the newspaper smothers the grass, kills it, and then it decomposes so that you never have to touch it again. And then you can either dig a hole through in the springtime to plant, or you can just leave it and never touch it again. So there's that. And this is what it looked like later that fall. I just wanted to make my garden a little bit bigger. So instead of digging anything, I just had a little help, you can see, but just made it a little bit bigger. And here it is the following spring. Here, the daffodils coming up through the newspaper. They were able to punch up through it. And you can see how it kind of sticks out a little bit. So you do have to keep reapplying the mulch on top. But it works great. It's just a handy way to do it. And then this is the end. I was just going to say, if you're having any problem, if your garden just doesn't seem like it's really thriving, it's probably the quality of your soil. And soil as a whole another topic is just so important. And so just be aware that you need to keep feeding your soil, giving it organic matter, taking good care of it. Think about the health, the life, all those microorganisms in that soil. And by not leaving the soil bare really helps with that a lot. And these are some sources of organic matter that you can, so by organic matter, we don't mean that it's certified organic necessarily. It means that it's something from a plant, so it will decompose, as opposed to like the rubber. The rubber and plastic mulch as well is great for blocking weeds and holding moisture, but it doesn't contribute the organic matter. So that's why when we're in a vegetable garden or a flower garden that you're turning up, you want to have something that'll break down. I think that's it. Yes, that's the end. Oh, good. I think the timing worked out okay. Any other lingering questions?
I have one, definitely. It's more about fruit trees, honestly.
Okay.
I do have a couple branches on a pear tree and an apple tree that I need to trim, but from time to time there's fruit that falls down on the ground. I don't necessarily, I will pick it up, clean it up, that kind of thing. But is that the worst thing? Is that just going to, make its way down and I don't have to worry about more apple trees or pear trees coming up if I keep my grass mowed?
You mean, you said something about, you're talking about pruning a branch at first, but now you're talking about the fruit on the ground?
At first, yeah. I mean, I know what you said about the pruning the branches, if it's a lawn, I don't want to spur on growth, that I should do it at a certain time. Yeah. More about the fruit on the ground.
No, it won't sprout because as you say, as you mow it, if any of it by any chance happen to sprout, which probably isn't going to happen anyway, you must be mowing it off, so it won't be a problem.
Perfect.
Yeah, no worries there.
You have to be a busy woman to take care of all that stuff.
I do love to garden. I really do. So that's what's so wonderful about being retired now. I'm able to spend a lot of time. I'm in my happy place when I'm out there. I love it.
It's all pretty, very
Awesome.
pretty.
Thank you. Thanks, Dolores. Yeah, I get a lot of joy. I gotta say, I really love watching things grow. It's very rewarding.
Well, I really want to thank you, Amy, for taking your time and answering all of our questions and going through this, trying to give us all a little bit more peace of mind as we head towards winter with all of our stuff. And thank you all for being here and asking some great questions. So it was really, really helpful. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank to all of
Thank
you. I
you.
also
Doing
put a
this.
quick plug in for cooperative extension, especially for Debbie, since you're kind of, getting things going and stuff. By all means, get a hold of cooperative extension. Jolene Wallace coordinates the Master Gardener program, and she does what I used to do early on in my career. And she answers all kinds of gardening questions. So by all means, contact them, ask questions, and they can help you out.
Okay.